Hi, Naomi Morrison here, your local Vancouver realtor, and I'm going to talk to you about the top 10 things you should know about oil tanks. Number 1. The City of Vancouver maintains a database of records of houses including oil tanks, but these should not be relied upon. Always do your own due diligence. Number 2. Removing an oil tank. This isn't particularly time-consuming or expensive, providing that it's a fairly straightforward removal. My first oil tank experience, my buyers negotiated and the sellers happily removed the tank. Unfortunately, it was underneath a concrete pillar or concrete block, and it ran the sellers about $14,000. But on a regular, straightforward oil tank, it could be a few $1,000s in a day's work. Which brings me to point number 3, soil contamination, which can quickly increase the cost of removal of a tank drastically. Soil contamination happens when a tank is not fully drained. In one case in West Vancouver, it cost a seller more than $160,000 for the soil remediation. So don't get stuck in that position. Number 4, if a seller provides a report, can I rely on this as a buyer? No. It's really important that you understand the limitations of the report. For example, when the technician was doing the scan, was there a car parked in the driveway, which they couldn't scan under? Or they didn't have access to a particular room, particularly the basement. So just make sure that you know and you make yourself aware of all the limitations of that report. The other thing to consider when looking at a seller's report as a buyer is what kind of report was done. If it was a simple metal detection, they might not be able to see something under a concrete slab, which brings me to point number 5. Ground penetrating radar, or GPR for short, is the most effective way to scan for an oil tank. However, a qualified technician is going to use a number of different ways in order to determine whether there's an oil tank or the potential of one. Number 6, how to protect buyers. First and foremost, you need to contact your local and professional real estate agent. It's imperative that we are able to write the correct clauses in your contract of purchase and sale to protect you. And spend the $500 on the scan. It could be one of the biggest investments of your life. The $500 could save you so much time and energy in the future. And money. Number 7, caveat emptor, or buyer beware. While this is the overriding principle in any dispute, once a deal closes or completes, it's buyer beware. If you use the correct clause in a contract of purchase and sale, you may, however, have recourse against the seller in the future for an oil tank if one is discovered. It won't, however, protect you against the cost of legal fees in order to take action. Number 8, for the seller. A property disclosure statement, also referred to as a PDS, will not always protect you against liability. In one case, a seller was called back 15 years after their deal completed. And unfortunately, that tank was also leaking. 15 years soil contamination. Don't be that seller. Number 9, if you suspect oil contamination, don't call your contractor. Call an environmental engineer immediately. This is super important. They are the only people who can sign off on the remediation of the soil contamination. And number 10, the best advice is for all parties to know the truth as soon as possible. Don't bury your heads in the sand. Don't deny everything up front. Going to court is costly, and at the end of the day, it's a roll of the dice. You just never know what way the judge is going to rule. If you haven't had a chance to check out my article, you can do so in the link below. It's interesting because there's some real life cases, some with unpredicted outcomes. And if you have any further questions or comments, please don't hesitate to get in touch. You can catch me at 604-781-0207 or on my website at naomimorrison.com. I look forward to connecting.